Most developers watch Angular tutorial but freeze when interviewer asks explain how your project actually works. In this video, I will simulate a real Angular interview based on Task Manager CRUD API we built together previously. At the end, you will exactly know what questions are asked, how to answer like a real developer, and how to explain your project confidently. If you have not watched the build video, we created a full Task Manager API where we have a task list, get task by ID, add task, update task, delete task, and how to connect your Angular with your backend API. Now let's turn this project into interview gold. So let's talk about the interview question you can face in your interview. So question number 1 is the very favorite question most of the interviewer. They will ask you explain your project structure. So you can explain like this: my Angular app follow component based structure. The UI is split into the reusable component like task list and the task form. Business logic and API communication are handled in the dedicated service like task service. This keep application maintainable, scalable and testable. Question number 2. Why did you create a service instead of calling your API in the component? So here interviewer try to understand, do you have a deeper knowledge of the component service or you just build it and just explaining the theory part? So you can explain him like, I used the service to separate a concern. Component focus on UI part and user interaction. Service is basically built for the API communication and the data handling. This make code reusable and easy to test. Question number 3. How does component communicate with the backend? So again, interviewer try to check if you have actually built the application or you are talking just by reading the theory. So if you actually build the application, then you can explain it how your component communicate with the backend. So your answer should be like, Angular use HTTP client from common HTTP package. It return observable and allow asynchronous data handling and reactive program. Question number 4. How does your application load tasks? So you can say, on component initialization, I call the method get all tasks from the service inside the ng-on-init method. The service send get request to the API and response subscribe to update the UI. Question number 5. How did you implement add task? Answer is, I created using Angular reactive form. When the user submit the form, I call the post API and send the form data as a payload. And when I receive the response as a OK, then I refresh the UI to show the changes to the user. Question number 6. How did you implement update task? When the edit button click, I populate the form with the existing data. So for populating the detail, I call the get API by ID and then I get the response and bind that response in our reactive form. After editing, when user click on the submit button, then again I call the put API and send the new data as a payload to the API, and after the update, when API send the success response, then I update the UI to show the notification to the user. Question number 7. How did you implement the delete task? On delete task button, I pass the ID of the particular task, then it's deleted in the backend and then I receive the response and I refresh the UI. Now let's discuss about the Angular core concept question which can be come to you in your interview. So the first question is difference between observable and promise. This is the very favorite question of all interviewer. I am just giving the simple answer. You can also Google it and do your research and try to understand, try to use both in your project and then you can explain it with confidence, because if you just see the theory part and try to explain it, then obviously interviewer will tweak you and obviously then interviewer will ask another question and at some point you will feel stuck because you did not use it. So it is very important, you have to use it, then explaining it in your interview. So the answer is observable can emit the multiple value over the time, and it support the multiple operator like filter, like map and filter. There are lots of operator, so you can Google it and check. Promise resolve one, Angular prefer observable for HTTP call. So question number 2, what life cycle hook you use in your project and why? So you can say I use ng on init in our task list component because it call after the component initialization, and this is the ideal situation to load the API data on the page load. Question number 3, how does data binding work here? So you can say I used two-way binding for form input and property binding to display task dynamically. Question number 4, how did you handle state update? So you can say after each CRUD operation, I updated the local task list to keep UI in sync without full page reload. Question number 5, how will you scale this application? So you can say I will add the state management library like ngrx, implement lazy loading, introduce share module. Next question is, how would you handle errors? I would use RxJS to catch the error in service and show the user friendly message to the end user. So next question is very important question. How would you secure your API? So this question is the very big question actually. So it is not limited to front end only, but it is the most part in the backend part. So we will discuss it later after our authentication implementation video. So we will implement authentication part in our API, and then we will talk about this security question in the next video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.